Ever get one of those, like, kind of spooky feelings? Where it seems like the universe is, like, messing with you.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Things happen and you're like, no way, that was just random.
Right.
That's synchronicity. And it's what we're diving into today. Basically, it's those weird connections where things are linked by meaning, not cause and effect.
Like they just fit together.
Exactly. And get this, we're going straight to the source. Carl Jung,
The psychiatrist.
the one and only, he spent years trying to wrap his head around synchronicity.
I mean, it's definitely a head scratcher.
Totally.
Right.
Especially for someone like Jung, you know? He was all about science, cause and effect, all that.
Right. Yeah.
And then he keeps bumping into these meaningful coincidences that just don't fit the mold.
So what do you do?
He called them challenges to causality. Kind of like, okay, universe, you're messing with me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Like, what's going on here?
I know. And he didn't just, like, think about it, you know? He had some crazy examples to back it up.
Oh, I bet.
Like, there was this one time a patient was telling him about a dream.
Okay. What was the dream?
It was about, like, a golden scarab beetle or something.
Oh.
And as she's talking, Jung hears this tapping at the window.
Oh, no. What was it?
You guessed it? A golden scarab beetle trying to get in.
No way.
Swear to God.
That's insane.
I know, right? It's like, what are the odds? Almost like the universe was trying to make a point, you know?
Like a cosmic prank or something.
Yeah, exactly. And Jung, he wasn't just, oh, that's weird and moved on.
He kept track.
Oh, yeah. He documented a ton of these, like, head-scratching moments.
Huh. Like what else?
There's a story about a woman, she dreams of fish
Okay.
the next day. Fish, fish, fish everywhere.
No way.
Yeah,
Really?
serious. On signs, in conversations, like it was following her.
Wow.
And then, get this, there's an account of a patient's wife.
Yeah.
She dreams her husband dies.
Oh.
And it happens exactly like in the dream.
Whoa.
Chilling, right? Shows you how heavy these synchronicities can be.
Definitely not just some fun little coincidences.
Right. Makes you wonder, are these experiences trying to tell us something?
It's hard not to think that, isn't it?
Yeah, like maybe our dreams, they're priming us to see things we'd normally miss.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or maybe there's this deeper link between our inner world and what's happening around us.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a wild thought.
It is.
And Jung wasn't the only one noticing this stuff either.
Oh, yeah.
There was this astronomer, Camille Flammarion.
Okay.
He was also documenting these weird events.
Really? What kind?
Okay, picture this. He's writing about the power of wind.
Uh-huh.
And suddenly this gust of wind blows in and scatters his papers everywhere.
Uh-huh. No way.
I know, right? Almost like reality has a sense of humor.
Yeah, that's wild.
Oh, and there's this story about Monsieur de Forquebus, some guy who, like, randomly starts thinking about a specific plum pudding recipe. And guess what? Out of nowhere, he served that exact dish.
You're kidding.
I'm not.
It's like the universe is playing charades.
Exactly.
So all these uncanny events, they made Jung think there's got to be something more going on.
Right, like there's no way this is just chance.
Yeah, he started exploring the unconscious mind, thinking maybe that's the key.
So he's seeing connections between these random events and the inner workings of our minds.
Right.
Now things are getting really interesting.
I know, right?
So what was he uncovering about the unconscious?
Well, he thought these things called archetypes, these patterns in our unconscious, might be involved.
Archetypes.
Yeah, like universal blueprints in our minds that shape how we see the world.
Huh. So it's like a hidden language of symbols and meaning that our unconscious picks up on.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But is this idea of interconnectedness really that new? Were there others before Jung who thought along these lines?
Actually, Jung pointed out that ancient and medieval philosophies already talked about meaningful connections beyond cause and effect.
Oh, really? Like,
Yeah.
who?
Thinkers like Avicenna, Albertus Magnus, Pico della Mirandola, all these guys exploring the interconnectedness of events, the role of the soul, things like that.
Sounds right up Jung's alley.
Yeah, they weren't afraid to, like, really question things.
Seems like we've been trying to understand these connections for centuries.
Definitely a recurring theme.
Speaking of meaningful connections, what about the I Ching? Isn't that all about finding meaning in seemingly random events?
Oh, absolutely. The I Ching is a perfect example of a non-causal way of looking at things. It says that random occurrences, like how yarrow stalks fall or coins land, can actually reveal patterns and insights.
So like you focus on a question and the I Ching through these random events gives you an answer.
Exactly. It embraces those synchronistic connections, showing how what seems random on the surface might actually be part of a deeper order.
It's like those choose your own adventure books, but the choices are made by chance.
Yeah. And it's not just an Eastern thing. There's a Western method too, the Ars Geomantica, where you use patterns of dots to find meaning.
So both use random events, dots or stalks, to tap into a deeper meaning.
Yeah, pretty cool.
It really makes you wonder about the nature of randomness.
Doesn't it?
And this leads us to one of Jung's most interesting explorations, his astrological experiment.
Astrology. Now that's something I didn't expect.
Right. It seems a bit out there, even for Jung.
It does. What was he trying to find in those charts? So he was looking at birth charts, right?
Yeah.
Trying to see if there were any patterns in the positions of the planets at the time these couples were born.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't just any random planetary placements. He was specifically interested in certain astrological aspects, like the angular relationships between planets in the chart. Some aspects are traditionally thought to be more significant, like indicators of compatibility or something.
Oh, okay, I see. So was he looking for those significant aspects, seeing if they popped up more often in the charts of married couples?
You got it. And get this. He found that those traditionally meaningful aspects did appear way more frequently in the charts of married couples compared to if you just randomly paired people up.
Huh. So like more than just chance.
Way more. The frequency was much higher than what you'd expect if it was just random.
That's pretty wild. But didn't Jung himself have reservations about proving synchronicity, like scientifically? Didn't he say it's tough to replicate these events?
Oh yeah, he was definitely aware of the challenges. I mean, you can't exactly recreate these things in a lab like you can with other experiments.
Right, it's not like mixing chemicals or something.
Exactly. And then there's always that risk of bias creeping in, Like, remember the fish dream example? At first, it seems like a slam dunk for synchronicity.
Right, fish dream, fish everywhere the next day.
But then Jung points out, it was a Friday. People eat fish on Fridays. Plus, she knew he was writing about fish symbolism.
Oh yeah, that does make it less mysterious.
It does, right? Suddenly, those improbable connections become a lot more probable.
Oh, what's the takeaway?
Think critically. Question your assumptions before jumping to conclusions. Consider all the explanations, not just the ones that fit your narrative.
Makes sense. We gotta stay objective.
And you know what I admire about Jung? He was honest about finding errors in his research, moments where his own bias might have crept in.
Really?
Remember how he talked about his astrological experiment? He was so invested in finding supporting evidence, he admitted his own eagerness might have skewed his interpretation of the data.
Wow, that's humility right there. Even brilliant minds can get caught up in their own expectations.
Exactly. It's a lesson for all of us. Stay open to revising our thinking when new information comes up.
Definitely. So we've talked about the mind influencing reality, these synchronicities, the unconscious. But how do we actually explain it all? What's the mechanism at work here?
That's the million-dollar question, and there isn't a simple answer. Jung himself wrestled with this. He emphasized that synchronicity doesn't negate causality, cause and effect. He wasn't throwing out the laws of physics.
So he still believed in cause and effect, but he saw synchronicity as operating alongside it, especially when it comes to the mind.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like this interplay between the physical world, governed by cause and effect, and the psychic world, where meaning and archetypes can seemingly influence things.
So, two sides of the same coin, maybe?
I like that. And it's interesting because Jung was really into Eastern philosophy. You know the Taoist concept of the Tao?
Vaguely.
It's all about the interconnectedness and flow of all things. Instead of seeing the universe as a giant clockwork mechanism, it's like a dynamic web of relationships.
Huh. So meaning comes from how everything is connected.
Yeah. It embraces both the physical and the psychic, the material and the meaningful.
Okay, I kind of get it. But this idea of the mind being more than just the brain, like it's intertwined with a larger reality, honestly, it's a bit over my head.
I hear you. It's a lot to process. It's basically saying our minds aren't these isolated things. We're part of a bigger web of connection. And maybe our thoughts, feelings, even our intentions can impact the world in ways we don't fully grasp yet.
So it's not that our minds are creating reality out of thin air, but more like we're active participants, and our minds play a role in shaping our experiences.
Exactly. It's pretty empowering when you think about it.
I can see that. And it connects back to those intense emotions that often go hand in hand with synchronicities. Remember how Jung noticed that? people often feel super emotional during these moments, like excited, anxious, or like they've just encountered something profoundly meaningful.
Right. And even in his astrological experiment, the results were stronger when the participants were really engaged and interested. When their interest faded, so did the results.
So it's not just the events themselves, but how we feel about them. Like our emotions are amplifying those synchronistic occurrences.
Yeah, it's like we're co-creating these synchronicities, not just passively observing them. But even with all this talk about archetypes and emotional amplification, there have to be some skeptics out there. Not everyone buys into this whole meaningful coincidence thing, right? Yes, and skepticism is healthy. Remember Jung's fish dream example? Once you factor in that it was Friday, it becomes less impressive.
Right, gotta stay critical and look for other explanations.
And even with the best research, there's always the chance that things just happen randomly.
For sure. That's where statistical analysis comes in, right?
Yeah.
We need to figure out if those synchronicities are happening more often than random chance would suggest.
Exactly. Jung's astrological experiment is a great example. Those results were statistically improbable, meaning they were unlikely to have occurred just by chance.
But weren't those results still within the realm of possibility?
Well, yeah. The probability of those specific astrological aspects showing up was something like 1 in 1,500. It's like flipping a coin and getting heads 10 times in a row. It could happen, but it's really unlikely.
So not definitive proof,
Yeah.
but definitely food for thought.
Exactly. Jung's experiment raises some interesting questions. Maybe there's more to astrology than we think, or maybe these ancient systems are tapping into something we don't fully understand yet.
Maybe it all goes back to the idea that our unconscious minds are picking up on these connections in ways our conscious minds don't.
Right. Our conscious minds, with their focus on cause and effect, might be missing a big part of the picture.
It's like we're only seeing a tiny sliver of a much larger, more interconnected reality.
So, what does all this mean for us? How does understanding synchronicity change how we experience and understand the world? Makes you think, like what if we're missing out on all this meaning because we're stuck in that cause and effect mindset?
Right, it's like we're limiting ourselves.
Yeah. What if we actually paid attention to these synchronicities?
Jung thought it could really change things, like for our well-being.
Really?
Yeah, he saw it as a way to connect with, like, the deeper parts of ourselves, the intuitive parts.
The parts that get drowned out by, everyday life.
Exactly. It's like all the noise and demands, they kind of shut that stuff down.
So if we start noticing these meaningful coincidences, these moments where things click, maybe we can tap into that unconscious language.
Like learning a secret code.
Yeah. And then who knows, maybe the universe starts whispering to us, giving us hints, guiding us.
I like that. Like little nudges toward a more meaningful life.
Yeah. So it's not just the big, crazy synchronicities, but also the little everyday ones, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Finding that perfect parking spot when you're late, bumping into a friend right when you need them.
It's like those things happen all the time.
They do, but we don't always see them that way. It's about shifting our perspective.
Being open to the possibility that there's more to it.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm with you. But this whole idea of the mind actually influencing reality, it's still kind of mind-blowing.
I know, right?
Remember Jung talked about psychic relativity?
Vaguely. What was that all about?
It's this idea that our experience of time and space, inside our minds, it can be different from what clocks and rulers tell us.
Oh, okay. Like our internal experience doesn't always line up with objective reality.
Right. Think about dreams. Time is all messed up in dreams.
That's true. You can dream a whole lifetime in a few minutes.
It's crazy. Time bends and stretches.
Wild.
And Jung thought some psychic stuff like precognition or telepathy might be related to that, maybe time isn't always linear.
That's a big thought.
It is, and it connects back to synchronicity, doesn't it?
Oh, how so?
Well, if the mind can work outside of linear time, those connections between events, even if they're far apart in time or space, they start to make more sense.
Oh, I see. It's not that the events cause each other, but they're linked by a deeper meaning, and our minds are picking up on that.
Yeah, like a pattern that only makes sense from a different perspective. And Jung thought this pointed to a bigger, more interconnected reality where meaning is fundamental.
So we're more connected than we realize.
It seems that way. This has been a wild deep dive. Archetypes, the I Ching, astrology, even psychic relativity.
A lot to take in.
But before we wrap up, any real-world applications for this synchronicity stuff? Or is it just a cool idea?
Jung believed that paying attention to synchronicities could actually give us insights into our lives.
Really?
Yeah, like becoming more aware, of the patterns, the connections, the ways the universe might be trying to communicate with us.
So it's not about forcing these things to happen, but being open to them when they do.
Exactly. Cultivating curiosity, noticing when things click, and asking, what does this mean?
Makes you think about that golden scarab beetle showing up right when Jung's patient was talking about it. What if that wasn't just random?
Right. What if it was a message, a symbol of the transformation happening in her life?
It's like the universe is speaking to us, but in this symbolic language we don't always understand.
It's a call to be more present, to pay attention, and to trust that there might be more going on than meets the eye.
Well said. And that's a wrap for this deep dive, folks. We've explored synchronicity, delved into Jung's mind, and touched on ancient wisdom that echoes these ideas. But the real journey starts now. Go out there, pay attention to those moments of synchronicity, those impossible coincidences that make you stop and think. What if those moments are more than just chance? What if they're invitations to explore a deeper reality, a world of meaning and connection that lies just beyond our everyday understanding?